I look the same? What looks different?
No, you look the same.
Oops, sorry. Thank you so much.
Hey Karen, I apologize. Can you please share screen?
Sure, no worries. Okay, you should be good now.
Beautiful. All right. So I wanted to just touch base. Thank you, Harriet, for pointing out a couple good topics that you sent me that email. That was really helpful to and we'll touch base on a couple of those. I just wanted to touch base with y'all before I present, before we present on Monday. And I was talking with Bernie Toms from the Policy and Procedure Subcommittee. And we want to make sure that some of the things that we bring up are also incongruent with policies and procedures. So we talked a lot about making sure that our recommendations are interconnected and really touch base on all these kind of levels. So one of our biggest things is unbiased policing, but really the type of training that we do for that. So I just wanted to show you guys real quick the policy and procedure that's in place when it comes to unbiased policing in regards to training is this: all members will receive basic and periodic in-service training and, where deemed necessary, remedial training on subjects related to the following: police ethics, cultural diversity, police-citizen interaction, standards of conduct, conducting motor vehicle stops, implicit bias, and related topics suitable for preventing incidents of bias policing. I think these are some good topics that they have down there, but I think that when we make our recommendation, when it comes to addressing racism in the police department trainings, that it really words Undoing Racism workshop through People's Institute of Survival and Beyond, that PSAB is the curriculum that we use. So because that goes into a further level of history of racism. And I think that that's one of the things that is failed to be even addressed in the policies and procedures, is acknowledging history of racism within the community.
And Patrick, I didn't do the homework of finding out anything about what Stanford had done, but I just caught the tail end of what you were saying, and I'm glad, especially as a trainer and organizer with the Institute.
Yeah, definitely. And don't worry about the Stanford thing. Let's see if we can work on that, because we still have a little time. But like like we've been told, these are some of our preliminary recommendations, but we can still make some tweaks to them. We have a little time. So if we could learn what Stanford did, that would be great, because I really want to incorporate that. It's still in our notes here that we're going to get their recommendation. So we'll make sure we include that. So when I just wanted to put in a little like precursor here, that the issue is that including training topics to be congruent with policy and procedures. So it's something that we can build a little bit more on, but since Bernie and I spoke at length about how things are so intertwined, I think that it'll be important for us to do that when it comes to not only training, but equipment as well. And like we said, technology, we talked a bit about a kind of database that could track police misconduct. That's definitely going to be a part of policy and procedure, because Bernie is definitely working on that as well with his subcommittee. And then we could even talk to Wade about making sure that that's a part of qualifications and recruitment as well, because you know, if there's this database that, this registry that tracks police misconduct when it comes to qualifications and hiring, you know, that they should be looking into previous police misconduct. So I just wanted to point out to you guys that we have some good, like interconnected things here with some of the other subcommittees. And anytime that we can, you know, connect with other subcommittees and make sure we're on the same page, I guess you could say, with our recommendations would be great. I haven't had a chance to speak with anyone from the community engagement side, but I will make sure I check in with some of the team over there as well. So Harriet, do you want to touch base briefly? I know you had some.
Yeah, I mean, I just, you know, we get one chance. So, you know, I just want to make really sure, you know, they do have the 6 CIT people who get extra training every year in mental health. And they have a full-time social worker and they have 2 mental health outreach. That's really good for a department, I think, of 200. But maybe not everything gets down to everybody. We are seeing problems with people like with cognitive disabilities, and they may be in like smaller interactions. But there is a first responders ID for people with developmental disabilities and autism, and it's New York statewide. But maybe we should be pushing more awareness of it to get people to get it. And here, the card will say, you know, let me bring it up. But anyway, it will say, it has your name and stuff. It says, I have a developmental disability, and you know, it may cause me to behave a little erratically, you know, I'm not being rude, but things like that. But it'd be nice if we could do that with deafness, because that is also a big problem. People who can't, you know, who cannot, a lot of cities have done that for first responders and for police, and you know, it could be useful. But I just want to make sure they get more training and that they get the average. I know that the police get a lot of mental health training in the academy, like 40 hours, which is a lot considering, you know, how that they're not there that long in the academy. But I just like to make sure that particularly some of the officers who haven't had that training recently are refreshed, so that they recognize that this person is having maybe this type of mental illness, or to look for symptoms of things like mania and severe depression or schizophrenia, and to make sure they work with the mental health outreach team too, to try to resolve things or get people help to avoid excessive incarceration, negative interactions. So just want to make sure that, you know, this is our only chance. So
Yeah, I agree. So some of the, just to recap.
Also for transparency, there really isn't good recording of what goes on with interaction with mental health, because it's not always recorded that way, the incident, and also data is really out of date. So we don't know exactly what kind of interactions in general the police are having with whom. And that's something we really need, but that's kind of transparency. But it is also a way of evaluating training.
I love that idea, Harriet, because, you know, I'm all about like data and tracking things, that maybe there's some way that we can include that in our recommendation, because you're right. If you're not assessing, you know, how many stops you have with people with disabilities or mental health, then how, and like how those interactions went, then how are you going to better it? So maybe there's a way that, and I think Chief Costelli may have mentioned at one point too, that we can ask for that kind of information. So maybe that's something that we could reach out and ask for.
It would be good.
Yeah,
I mean, I know the Department of I think it's Board of Mental Health, or anyway, they do some of the training with the White Plains Police and the Westchester Police, a lot of it actually. But yeah, they said that was a problem too. They felt it was.
Is it possible to, so is this a place where anecdotal information is helpful, or are we looking for hard data? I'm asking because I have a deaf colleague, and my sister's place is working with New York Presbyterian's deaf program and the New York School for the Deaf. And just anecdotally, my colleague, I'll just call her JM for now, has shared with me a lot of the ways that there's actually an intersection between disabilities and racism, and the numbers of Black and brown people who are disabled who experience negative interactions with law enforcement. And I'm wondering, are we looking for, again, the question is, are we looking for data, or do you want anecdotal, or what kind of information do you need? Because, I mean, I
would
just
say whatever we could get.
Okay.
Is helpful.
Okay.
Because I think it's a real problem, and I'm not sure when people do disability awareness training, they think to bring race in to it.
Probably not. No.
No, I've never heard of that happening. It's so obvious that it should, and even class, but especially race. Yeah, that's where the problems are, often.
I really like that we're adding that into this mix, because the data drives how you educate people, right? And if we can identify these, like, we know that there's racial disparities, we know a lot of kind of some of the general data, but this is a really, really specific thing to address. Like you said, the intersectionality of mental health and disabilities and race when it comes to interactions with police. So these are some I really like this. And somehow we will formulate this into our recommendation. It might work in with some other things when it comes to policies and procedures and some other subcommittees as well. So
yeah,
I
think
included
getting a clear idea what's happening is good.
Okay, and then we have having a curriculum that is also in some way inclusion of like peer-led. And I added blind and deaf to our list as well.
Good.
Provided by a mental health provider or individual with lived experience, working together. And we said agencies like Family Ties, DCMH, My Sister's Place, The Loft, etc.
Westchester Independent Living Center, also
Okay.
Westchester Disabled on the Move could be helpful.
Harriet, let me ask you a question, please. So are you aware of any scenarios or anyone on the line that an officer has come in contact with someone, let's say, who's deaf?
I have not.
Okay. Because
I have not had a lot of contact with people who are deaf, and I think I know it happens in Westchester.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about disabilities like that in general, like, a person who is, I don't even know how that could be handled without misunderstanding the more I think about it. So, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think a card could help, because you can hand a card that might say things like, I can lip read, or I can't lip read, or I use sign language, or, these things that you can't say.
Or something like a medic alert, something, a bracelet.
Something like that. Something like, too bad the state disability, it could fit with that, but
yeah,
that's for cognitive and autism, and that's excellent, because that's very much needed too, because they can't.
No,
so
that's
Rosemary, okay. I'm sorry. And again, this is not my wheelhouse, so I'm speaking on behalf of a coworker who has shared this information with me and what I've just looked for. The incidences, and I don't know specifically of any in Westchester, but most of the incidences I've seen, the news stories I've seen, are happen because, especially for Black and brown folks, because they're read as non-compliant or threatening when they don't respond. And so there's never, in the cases I'm thinking of, there's not that moment when an officer says, oh, they must be deaf, or oh, there must be a reason that they're not complying with the orders. That's, and
right. Or maybe they're walking away and because they're not hearing.
Right.
You know, there was a case, I think maybe in Portland, it was not anywhere near here, but yeah, they were sort of walking away, but they didn't hear, you know, they didn't hear the orders behind them.
And I'm sure that there is like hard data out there. I can only think of like anecdotes. That's why I wanted to know.
Yeah, I can only think of anecdotes myself. I just know that I keep reading about it. I know that
Yeah.
other towns, mayors, advisory committees have told me they have done the ID thing. So it was on their mind. I mean, this is not for a while, you know, not just
Did
recently.
Harriet, did they do the ID thing for deaf folks or just for disability?
No, well, no, some towns have done it, but this statewide thing is not for deaf folks, and that's really sad. But it
Yeah,
is for
I would
people with
agree.
cognitive disabilities and autism only.
And that's a big one too, because
Very big.
people don't read autism as autism because there's a spectrum. So that also puts
Yeah,
people's lives in danger.
Right,
that
and
wasn't-
it's not like the two cognitive people who there was a letter about that. I've met them. You know, if you're introduced to them, they might not say hello or anything, and that could seem to a
Right.
police officer who's sort of demanding a response surly. You know, that could seem very non-compliant, and you wouldn't think that this person is really developmentally disabled or anything, but maybe then they start getting really upset, or if they are talking, then, you know, their answers don't quite line up. And so, but by the time you realize that the police may have already caused inadvertently some trauma, and they are traumatized, you know, that's the letter specifically said that, but yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a problem, you know. And somewhere near, I think it was an autistic person killed. But yeah, no, these are very serious problems. And people who are in the, you know, in a manic attack or, you know, hallucinating wildly and schizophrenic and paranoid, you know, paranoids call the police and then they freak out, and, you know, their behavior is very, very trying and difficult. And it is hard for police. But yeah, this is when you really want to reach out to those mental health experts that they have, because, you know, these, you know, often the police are there to either get someone help, or the family is exhausted and drained and can't handle this person. But yeah.
Right.
I was also wondering, because I know that Brian mentioned that sometimes if they can't get somebody into a shelter, they keep them in the police station. I just wondered how they, you know, is that voluntary? But does that happen with mental illness? Is somebody really should be hospitalized, but they won't take them or whatever, and so they have to do something, you know, but just that we take care of these people with that, what the policies are, or maybe there aren't a policy because it happens on the fly, sort of. Also, for people with other disabilities, like I mean, we don't want to take people's canes away, people's wheelchairs. I don't know what kind of transportation they have in terms of transporting people with wheelchairs, but I think they use the fire department for that. But yeah, you know, I know like a cane or a walker could be a weapon, but if you're going to take something like that away from that person is now helpless. So you have to be there to help them if they can't get to the bathroom or just basic things. If you have them like in a jail overnight, you know, you never want to do that. And I would assume that's in the disability awareness, but just want to make sure they have sort of outline policies on that. If they have anything that we could get, I don't know.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna include that article that you sent, Kim.
Yeah, I just did a quick Google right now, and that Time magazine article said that there isn't hard data, right? So, you know, or what it, no, it said not hard data. There's not a national, shoot, I should just open it up. There's not a lot of reliable data nationally, I think is what it said. So there's some data, but, you know, it's just not tracked as closely as we would want for our purposes, which is, you know, maybe something that we should be thinking about for the state to do to make sure that they're tracking, you know, these incidents.
Yeah, not just like mental health, but yeah, interactions with people with any disability and.
Which, to your point, Harriet, I think is important for, I mean, so let's say the thing that we want the police department to be is anti-ableist,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then it's also training them on what ableism is and how it shows up.
Yeah, that's bias.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
where that curriculum that they have for fair and impartial policing, it, you know, it just doesn't cover every group. You know what I mean? There's so many marginalized groups,
Right.
and it just doesn't address everybody, whether it's race or gender or disability.
LGBTQ.
So
LGBTQ too.
yeah,
But we
LGBT.
have a lot of resources with groups in the community that can be helpful, I think,
Yes.
to come in to sort of supplement training or.
Yeah, that's why we did include we included that in this, and we included we also did make sure that we include, and we still need to come up with some additions to this, which we could work on, is like the undocumented families,
Mm-hmm.
and including that kind of focus in police training as well. So
Right. You know, I know people, you know, they have done things like driven without a license because they have no way to have a license. I don't know if we really want to be putting people in jail for things like this.
yeah. So I wanted to see if
Another
you
thing we
guys
want
had.
to avoid sort of excessive incarceration, and incarceration of the mentally ill is a big problem.
It's true. Very true.
It only exacerbates whatever kind of challenges they're already facing.
Right.
Intensifies, I should say.
Right. So jail is like the worst place to be, really, if you're.
Yep.
Yeah, but again, that goes to the type of culture that everyone understands, that the first thing is not going to be, are you undocumented, or the assumption,
Bingo.
right?
Yep.
So that's a cultural behavior, I believe.
To assume everyone's undocumented, yeah.
Yeah, no,
gosh.
not to assume that. That should be
Oh,
the
not to assume, yeah.
right. But some people may, and it may, I don't know why, but the culture has to be not, that can't be your go-to.
Yeah, I agree.
Promoting a culture that treats individuals
Fairly under the eyes of the law, regardless of legal status, I
I
guess,
like that.
something like that.
Yeah.
That treats individuals fairly.
I like that. All right. So yeah, I just want to see any other big kind of topics that we're feeling like we may have missed something. Like I said, these are preliminary recommendations. We can tighten these up. We have a lot. I feel like we have a lot of thorough aspects going on here throughout our recommendations, but we will definitely tighten it up and formalize it in a lot of ways. But any other things before we kind of present this to the larger committee base on Monday that you got?
Spit hoods under equipment somewhere.
What was it under equipment?
That they have spit hoods, or I don't know if they use
Oh
them.
yeah, you did send me that. Spit hoods.
Those are problematic.
So, and that's another one okay. So that's non-lethal equipment. So it's.
I mean, I understand the
actually
fear with
legal.
COVID of spitting, but it might be better for police to wear shields than to put a mesh bag over somebody's head. And you had somebody die in Rochester from that.
Yeah. So we might also need to
And
reach
that will
out to.
freak somebody out, you know, too. So it could accelerate things.
We might need to talk to policies and procedures
Mhm.
around that piece of equipment. So what you sent me, and they use them in White Plains, you have like,
I'm not sure they use them, but it was listed. So we should just check. I mean, chokeholds
Okay.
were listed and they don't do them. They don't do any type of chokehold, so.
right, okay. So we'll make sure that we definitely do some follow-up on that, on some policies and procedures around that piece of equipment, and make some recommendations accordingly.
Hey, Patrick, up at the top where you have a call to men listed,
A call to,
men, it's way up at the top. I think if you just do a search for it, you'll see it. I was just gonna ask you to take that out. Or you know what? I'm sorry, never mind. Leave it there. I just remembered someone I can reach out to just to verify. Never
a
mind.
call to men,
Yeah,
to men. Yeah,
Disregard. I'm gonna check in with a friend of mine who works for them
okay.
Mhm.
about what kind of work that they could lend to what we're thinking about. Let me reach out first, and then because I wasn't sure if what they do is kind of what I was thinking of, but I know someone who works for a call to men who also teaches at John Jay Criminal, and there may be a way to. Anyway, I'm sorry. Just
No,
as
that's
I was
cool.
talking, I'm processing out loud. So as I was talking,
Okay, we all are.
something came to mind. So
Yeah, I'll leave it there. That sounds like a cool potential
Yeah.
thing to include in our and I think that sounds like a great just to fall back on that, promoting a culture where White Plains PD talks about their personal traumas and how to cope. Like you don't just do that overnight. You need to start with a training. You need to start with getting guys on the same page, avoiding all personnel within the department that stigmatizing or bullying, all that kind of stuff is not allowed. Like, so that kind of stuff has to be congruent in policies and procedures and in training. So I love that idea of seeing if we can get some kind of training or coaching around that topic. Because it's going to take a whole lot to change this culture.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do.
But it can be done.
It can.
Yes, man.
We don't give up.
So I can't think of too much else that I personally have been thinking of. I just want to make sure we included that, kind of like overlap with policies and procedures. We can examine that even like a little bit more in depth with Bernie and his committee, and make sure we're all on the same page, because we talked about that at length today. So I think now I kind of have a better understanding how we're interconnected and how to make sure we include that in there, because it needs to be a part of the policy and procedure that even a detail like going through this training for trauma is every 2 times a year. Like, that should be a policy and procedure. And we did talk about, because I know, Brian and others have brought up like the concerns around police having the time to do training, right? But, it's part of their professional commitment to their career and to this profession, and protecting and serving, is that you do this training whether you're on the clock or not. So, I know we're going to probably hear a lot of things and a lot of comments back at that, but it's something that social workers do. It's something that other teachers do. So if it's something that most professional career paths do it, we feel that police should be doing the same thing.
And do most do it like twice a year?
For police, they
Well, just in
make it seem,
general. Is there a point where it becomes sort of redundant or people tune out?
Well, no. From my experience, I know in child welfare, a lot of settings, the like training is at least one time a year, but if not more. A lot of times it's also 2 times. Like, so trauma training is usually at least 2 times, safety training 2 times. So in a lot of different realms, it's usually 2 times. Now with police, they talk a lot about 1 time in-service training, 1 time a year. Where they kind of do everything at once and pile it all in, and then they, keep things moving. So we're talking about making sure these trainings go a little bit more regularly. Oh, I think that's all I got.
Is that a yawn?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been on Zoom all day.
Don't apologize. You just
I-
out loud what some of us are thinking. That's all.
Yes, I think we're all thinking it.
It's a lot. There's so many, and like after talking to Bernie today too at length about policies and procedures, I'm like, and we really are like interconnected. So I am hoping, like, even after these preliminary recommendations, that some of us can speak to the other committees and just make sure, because if our recommendations are not only like strong individually, but like interconnected, then it's like you have to make these changes. Like, it's really really important that they really address some of these really important changes.
That's a good point. If we come at it from, and everything is interconnected. So
Yeah. Okay. So if anyone thinks of anything else, before Monday or anything, just feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email. We could update this running recommendation form that we have. But I feel like this is where we can kind of like cap our first round of recommendations at now, and then we
looks
can
really good. Yeah.
And yeah, thank you. And then we can add to it. Thank you guys for all your help and like
It's pretty big now, so.
No, it looks tight,
Yeah.
It looks tight. Boy, do we have a good leader.
Yeah, we are
thank
really
you guys
lucky,
for everything.
Patrick.
Oh, Patrick, I'm sorry.
No,
Can you scroll up just a little bit?
Yeah.
Right there. I have not seen the representative from the loft.
Yeah, I think she's on she might be on the committee that just presented. I don't know which committee she's on.
Well, can I throw something out for you just to think about?
Yeah.
And it's about my experience of training in the police department when I did the in-service for them. And I'll try to be as brief as possible. I was mentioning how we work with the LGBTQ community at my sister's place. And I remember explaining to them what the letters even stand for, because there's like just a basic ignorance of what the letters stand for. And so I was talking about transgender folks. And we know that transgender people, especially Black trans women, are dying at a higher rate. Like, I think it's up to somewhere in the high 20s for 2020. And I was talking about how it was the piece about pronouns, and the reasons why we use pronouns is because, we want to signal to the trans community that using pronouns is normal. So we're trying to normalize the use of pronouns. And I remember one of the officers in the training, and he was, I can't remember his rank, but I know he was wearing a white shirt. I remember that much. He was pretty much dismissive of the idea of treating a transgender woman as a woman. And he said, it's been a couple years, but he said that he didn't care how they addressed themselves. Whatever was, I think it was pretty crass. He either said whatever's on their driver's license or whatever's between their legs, that's how they're going to assign them a cell, or so a transgender woman could end up being put in a cell or in population, or however it works, with someone who was born as male.
That's so dangerous.
It is very dangerous. You and I and Rosemary and Janice and Karen and Patrick know that, but there is, thank you, Karen, for putting her name in there. I'm wondering if we could reach out to Judy just to get some of her recommendations, since she represents the loft,
I
because
think
it
that's really good.
goes beyond pronouns. It is also, it goes to how a lot of people have been socialized, because what we're talking about is homophobia, transphobia, and deeply rooted heterosexism. And that's something that needs to be addressed if they're going to work with the LGBTQ, and it's LGBTQIA, but we can stop at the Q. If they're going to work with that, that's some unpacking that needs to happen. So I just want to put that out there, since that's
That's
space.
part of bias training too, but it's good to have like trans people come in so they get to know these people.
So I wanted to put that in the recommendations, since I noticed that that space was empty. And that's an area, so if we, so let's say we have a Black trans person who is deaf, right? Like, you know what I mean? So like, these are all intersecting, to borrow from Kimberly Crenshaw's intersectionality work. But I just wanted to get that in there, highlighting trans people, but also helping, working with the entire community and understanding, and this came up in the training also, and this is around domestic violence, but understanding why folks in the LGBTQ community are often hesitant to call police because of the homophobia and the transphobia and other pieces. So just wanted to put that out there.
That's perfect.
Aaron, I see
Thank
your comments in the chat. Appreciate you.
Yep.
That's perfect. Okay. I think that really, that's thorough, and we're bringing up a specific, especially when it comes to detaining and
And that's a procedure too.
holding
Procedure
and
for-
incarceration. Yeah, that will definitely be something that we can address in policy and procedure as well, that those things are discussed
you don't
and
just put them in a
determined.
random cell with, someone who's female with men because you decide they're not, they're not female for some reason.
Yeah, because
And again, I may be misremembering, but I remember in that moment I thought I would be so afraid for a trans woman if they got arrested, because
Yeah.
so, and what we could do too is we can try to find out a little bit more information. I'll actually try to speak to someone from corrections in regards to like county jail, because if White Plains make sure that they implement this in their culture of their police department when it comes to detaining or holding individuals, then the county, we would want to make sure that the county jail is really on point with this too. Because it's like,
Yeah.
we don't want to, we have one thing set up in White Plains, and then as soon as they go to county, it just, everything that we try to do to protect the person goes out of the window once they go to county jail.
right.
There was someone today at the, there was a Zoom thing about de-incarceration, but one of the women speaking was trans. She had been in jail for 10 years and she
Yep.
went through all that.
Yep. Yeah, her story is very, really powerful. I was on that call too. So yeah, that is a great point, and especially to help protect the trans community. I think we should bring it up with White Plains, but then also see how we can work together with county police committee and then corrections department as well. Okay.
Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We should
Thank
really
you.
keep it up.
Yep.
All right, team. I think we're looking pretty good.
Yeah.
Like I said though, if you think of anything, shoot me an email. We can add it in there. We can tweak this quite a bit. But we'll present it on Monday, and we'll see. Well, I'm sure our committee is super diverse and experienced and knowledgeable with the White Plains community. So I'm sure we'll get some help in tweaking some things within our recommendations as well from them.
Yeah.
And just so you know, our meeting is at noon on Monday.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so I am actually, I'll be at an Undoing Racism workshop. all day from 11 to 5, so I'm gonna miss the meeting. I'm on the training team for an Undoing Racism workshop,
Yeah.
so yeah.
I'm gonna block out the time and I'll be there for us.
Okay, cool.
I'll be
Work
there.
unless something, because guys, I'll be honest, I do work at Pfizer, so things are heating up with this vaccine stuff.
Oh.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so
Oh, what's the
I'm
schedule, Rosemary? You know?
I'm gonna, unless I'm called away for something related to the vaccine, especially if they give an emergency authorization, I'm gonna be there for us.
Well, I can be there and we got Patrick, so, you know.
Yeah, it sounds good. We'll get it done. And then, like I said, too, we'll have a little bit of time as well to still make some changes and tighten things up and formalize these a little bit more. Okay.
All righty.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Stay safe.
Thank you, Patrick.
You too.
Thank
I'm
you,
gonna send a
everyone.
copy of this to everyone as well, just so you have it for your
Thank
record.
you.
Thank you.
Cool.
Bye-bye.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Good night.
Bye.